Manufacturing Hub. Today we've got a very special live build. We can actually announce that we're at the Siemens Catch facility in Charlotte, North Carolina. Up until about 2 hours ago, I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to disclose where we were. But very exciting build today. We've got Adam Broadwater and Arlen Hobby, as well as Chris Liu online, in addition to myself, and you guys know Vlad over there. You can see that we've put Adam in between us. I don't know if Adam has won or lost because he gets to sit in between us, but he gets the full Vlad and Dave experience. Today, as part of our live build, we're going to go try to answer a couple of questions that we see happen over and over again. We're going to talk about Industrial Edge. We're going to talk about Edge applications, including the Industrial Edge App Store that Siemens has that we're very excited about. We've had a couple of guests in the past talk about that, and we're very excited to continue that conversation today. In addition, we're going to go through the process of how can we normalize data, how can we use a standard application to visualize that data as OEE as part of that Industrial Edge application, and then we get to give you guys the first very sneak peek of the Siemens S7-1500 Virtual PLC build, which Adam has graciously agreed to go take us all through. Before we go ahead and jump into that build, we're going to give Chris a couple of minutes to help go showcase a little bit of the architecture.
All right, can you hear me clear?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thanks, Dave and Vlad. Dave, that's a beautiful opening. Thanks for the quick intro. Again, my name is Chris Liu. I am the Siemens Industrial Edge Product Marketing Manager here in the US. And joining me today, we have Adam Broadwater and Arlen Hobby, who are our two dedicated, intelligent Edge technical consultants, Edge experts. So really thankful for your effort and time putting into this live build. But before I hand it over to the live builders, I would like to give everyone like a quick intro about what Industrial Edge is. So again, long story short, Industrial Edge is just one of our edge computing platforms that is more than just data handling, data collection, or data storage. We at Siemens aim to use Industrial Edge to help the users to bring those IT analytics from the IT top floor down to your OT shop floor to make your data handling simple, scalable, and reliable. And then I'm going to give you a quick introduction, a quick overview about the three key components that consists of Industrial Edge. So first of all, let's start from the top. Industrial Edge Hub. So Industrial Edge Hub is actually placed in the cloud level, and it is the central starting point. So from Industrial Edge Hub, you can download the Industrial Edge Management OS operating system to enable the IEM on-prem or in cloud, all necessary software to run your Industrial Edge management system. Furthermore, the Industrial Edge Hub provides you with the app catalog, so you can you can run through all your purchased available Edge applications. And you can also find some very useful, helpful documentations like a user guide, user menu in your Hub account. And then let's move on to the central layer, Industrial Edge Management System. So Industrial Edge Management is actually placed in the factory level, and it is actually the central infrastructure of Industrial Edge. Industrial Edge Management is the best tool that allows you to manage both connected Edge devices and the Edge applications that you desire to execute on your desired Edge device. This IEM Industrial Edge Management System also provides you with tools to manage, Edge devices, tracking their analytics, and then down to your shop floor in your factory. We have all different kinds of Edge devices which are directly plugged in to your automation system. It can be your machines, it can be different PLCs, and we already support different protocol. Plus, Industrial Edge is also the layer where we put our Industrial Edge runtime on top of it, which is also the software layer to allow you to execute all different kinds of applications. So with that, I'm going to pass it back to Adam, and Adam will give you more insights and details about what we're doing today. Back to you, Adam.
Hi, everybody.
So I'm Adam Broadwater, and as Chris suggested, that I'm a technical expert on industrial edge here in the U.S., along with my colleague Arlen Hobby. So to give you a quick breakdown, I started on the wrong spot a little bit real quick. So got our marketplace, got our hub account. Hub account is where the applications are going to reside and how you're going to manage the edge management systems that you have. Here is the edge management. It's basically used for controlling and housing all of the apps, and you're going to use it to manage all of the edge devices that you're running. If you've noticed a theme, we like our HMI color schemes, and our edge devices have a similar color scheme. So the basic premise of today, what we're going to do, we're going to go online. We're going to create a new edge device, onboard it. I have a fresh 127 sitting right here that we can onboard. So I'm going to pop in here, pull down.
And I guess at the same time, Adam, if we want to introduce the hardware as well, it's been showing on the bottom screen right now, but if I can pull it up, do you want to introduce some of the components that we'll be working with? And ultimately, that's the 127E that you're connecting with sitting on the desk in front of us.
Yeah, sorry. So here's the 127E. It's a very small IPC that we built. It's an industrial PC. We have ourselves a 24-volt power supply, and then a Allen Bradley Micrologics PLC, and then here we have a 427. So I've got some apps pre-configured and set up on the 427 that we're going to walk through, and then showing you the onboarding of the 127, installing the V-PLC, and then ultimately downloading a PLC project to it.
Awesome, makes sense.
So going through, initially selected what type of edge device it was, gave it some user credentials, and now you come back through here and we're going to do some network setup. To do that, the trick I like to use is to actually come over to the edge device itself, and I grab my MAC address. Once I grab my MAC address, I can pop it in here. And because I know what I want this to be today, just give me a second and I will.
And so right now, Adam, this IPC has nothing on it. Is that correct? Or does it need to have anything installed when it comes out of the box? Like, what does that maybe experience looks like as you dive into setting up the right IP address for it?
Yeah, so the edge device, when it appears, you don't connect a keyboard to it, you don't connect a monitor to it.
Mm-hmm.
It is not going to be used as an IPC like most people think that you're going to use it for. The OS is a Debian OS, but it's had the entire UI removed out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been industrially hardened so that you're not going to be able to get in and breach the device. So everything goes through a web server. Mm-hmm. What you see here is the default web server. So the device appears in DHCP mode, so it reaches out to the local router, grabs an IP address, and then you go to that IP address. And this is the page that you're going to see when it is brand new out of the box.
Mm-hmm. I think we have an interesting question. So where is the rack in that PLC, right? And so again, the IPC is not going to have like standard IO that you attach to it like you would see in a normal PLC system with a rack. Instead, it communicates with other devices and it can run applications. Could you give us maybe more of like an overview so that people understand a little bit better, IPC versus PLC, and ultimately what is the intent of like an edge device? I think as Chris explained just a few minutes ago.
Yeah, so the industrial edge as a platform from Siemens is really set up and designed to help solve IT styles of problems on the shop floor. I'm not trying to replace your 1500 PLC or your 1200 PLC. The whole entire idea of bringing the PLC and separating it from the hardware and allowing it to run on the edge device is to allow you to do those types of workloads that you typically wouldn't have necessarily needed a lot of I/O to do, or the I/O is remotely distributed around. So you're not going to have that traditional PLC rack with your I/O slices right next to the edge device, because at the end of the day, the edge device is just an IPC.
Mhm.
But it's the operating system that runs on it that brings together all of the pieces to run the Docker containers and have everything be industrially hardened. That when you tie in the management system, it allows you to control and manage and update those IPCs that are installed on the factory floor.
Good, appreciate that. The other question, I guess, as we let you configure this is the licensing, right? So the edge devices as well as the applications, and we'll get into that in a few moments. As Adam ultimately configures the IPC, we'll see what that looks like and ultimately what it takes to either pull one of the applications that's already developed and has been presented by Siemens, or if you want to bring in your own, you can also containerize that. But we'll get into the licensing a little bit later in the stream.
And I just caught that I made a slight goof. That's supposed to be 0.9, 0.1 for that IP address. I'm going to add a second one. So what I'm doing right now is I'm configuring one IP address to be that IT network, and then a second one to be that OT network.
And so again, like this console, this is a tool that runs, so you have something running on the web server from the IPC, or is that running on your laptop?
So right now what you're seeing me connected into is I'm connected into the management system.
Mhm.
And the management system runs in two flavors. I can either run it as a VM, which here is the VM
Mhm.
that runs the IEM. Again, it's very similar to what you would see if you did connect a keyboard and monitor to the edge device. It tells you the firmware version, tells you the IP address, and it tells you the MAC address. And that's all you have.
Gotcha.
The login, as much as it says that it's there, there's not really anything that you can do with it.
Mhm.
So everything is served up through the web server. And right now what I'm doing is I'm configuring a configuration file that is going to come down out of the web server. I'm basically going to download it with my web browser, and then I'm going to re-upload it into the edge device.
Gotcha. Okay.
And what's going to happen is there's going to be a handshake between the IEM and the device itself. They're going to exchange certificates, establish communication, and allow everything to start to work. The one thing to point out is that the communication architecture, that IEM is not pushing down anything to the edge device.
Mhm.
The edge device has a built-in timer system that it basically reaches up to the IEM and makes a request and says, do you have a job for me? And if a job is there in the IEM waiting for that particular edge device, the IEM and the edge device then establish communications and complete the job.
Gotcha. So I guess as we let you finish the configuration, Arlen, if I can ask you, so ultimately the intent of the IEM is to be able to orchestrate the deployment of multiple IPCs, right? Like as you deploy them on, let's say, a machine or an entire line.
Yep.
From the IEM, you can manage multiple devices. And as Adam is going to show us a little bit down the road, in this scenario, we're only using one, but ultimately you can push different updates, you can push application. Like how does that maybe interaction work?
Yeah, so within the industrial edge management system, you can actually have multiples of devices, and like for firmware updates, for example, you can actually go into a list on the screen of your edge devices, and it'll actually show you which ones are out of date to the current versions. And then you can actually pick a version of the firmware and which edge devices you want to push it down to, and then it'll actually, the edge devices will pull those images down and it queues them up so that it doesn't overload your network. And the same thing with like apps. If you have an app that you want to update on multiple devices, or you actually install on multiple devices for the first time, same thing. You pick your edge devices, and then from there it'll set it up to the ones that you select.
Awesome. I like it.
So while you guys were talking, I finished creating my configuration file.
Mhm.
I clicked the submit and it downloaded it into my downloads folder. So now all I have to do is come back here and browse to that same folder. You got chose the wrong download folder.
And someone in the chat pointed out the acronyms. So IEM versus IED, Industrial Edge Manager versus device.
So now that I've selected that activation file, I just click activate. If you'll notice, the router served up an address of 173, but I set all the configuration to .90. So this screen is essentially going to be dead here in a minute because the edge device, when it exchanges the certificates, it's going to reset the web server to the new IP address. So the smart thing to do is to come back in here into our management system and basically wait until we see this little green bar showing that I'm online.
Gotcha. Awesome. Someone's asking, does the edge device or work like a thin client? Am I understanding this correctly? And I guess for me, the answer is no, but so it's not just presenting a screen, right? So thin client is just pulling like let's say an HMI from the server. This is not it.
No. So what the edge device is truly designed to do is to allow you to do computing at the edge. So the point is to bring applications that you would normally have either up in the cloud or in an IT infrastructure. So here, an SQL database, and then the other applications that we have available, as well as some third-party applications that you're going to bring onto that edge device to be able to do work locally. So the real case use point is inside of a factory. A machine builder brings in the machine and it has a PLC, and then they have a PC that's hiding in a box someplace that's running a little web server so they can do some analytics and things of that nature. That's what the edge device is trying to replace, because every different machine builder brings in their own little PC of some sort, and then it becomes a maintenance and just trying to control and keep all of those PCs up to date, whether they're running Windows or whether they're running Linux. All of those PCs are sitting out on the shop floor and no one is doing a good job of taking time to update them. So what the edge device does is, by tying back into that management system, it gives the IT infrastructure for being able to do mass updates or scheduling those updates to make sure that the devices don't end up lost and out of date.
Good. Dave, what are your thoughts so far?
I think it's interesting. I love the fact that we've made it to the third screen already. And I'm very excited to see where Adam's going to continue to drive us. So I'm going to go let Adam continue to drive us into this. But thank you, everyone. Fantastic comments and questions already in the chat. We've got Chris and John and Lewis and some other folks in there answering questions. So if you guys are watching in the chat anywhere, please feel free to go ahead and ask questions. And if we will either answer them live on this show or someone will get back with you.
So this page is essentially dead, as I said before. Now I can either just browse to it because I know the IP address, but we also have built in a nice little links. Plus, what the ad management does is it actually collects and gives you a dashboard showing you what the usages and things of that nature are of the edge device.
Interesting question. So someone's asking, what's the function of the two IPCs in front of you? One is acting as an IED and the other one as IEM. So I guess Nan is referring to the devices we have here really quickly. So just to reiterate again, right? So where the IED currently is the 127E.
So the 127E is an edge device. This 427 is also an edge device.
Right.
Yep.
A lot of the reason that we brought the 127 today was just to show that you could install the virtual PLC onto the 127 edge device. That's the main reason that it's there, was just the 127 IPC is very small, inexpensive IPC. And to be able to bring the power of a 1517 PLC to something like that is kind of interesting.
Looks like we have a conflicting answer. Someone said like, yes, the small one is as an IEM, but I think IEM is ultimately the software, right? Like if I understand correctly, you would label IEM as the software that allows you to orchestrate the deployment of tools to your IADs, which ultimately are the IPCs or the hardware that run the applications. Right?
Correct. Yeah, and in this case today, the IEM or the Industrial Edge Management System is actually running on Adam's notebook in a VM. So it's not even running on any of these IPCs.
And that's where in a factory infrastructure, you'd be running it on an ESXi server, or you could put it into a Kubernetes cluster.
Good.
So I follow that link, and because the certificates on this setup are all self-signed, the web browser is not going to recognize it.
Mhm. And so now you're connecting ultimately to that 127E, right? Like this is the interface of
Yep.
the actual edge device.
You're exactly right. So here I am logging into the 127. And as you can see, there's no apps installed on it. So what I'm going to do here is I'm coming back to my management system. I'm going to go to my catalog of applications. So for the purposes of what we're doing today, I'm just going to install the 1517 on it. And it's not a difficult thing. You have the menu and you have all the different edge devices that you can connect to. And you have the choice down here, like I can either delay my install by a few minutes,
Mhm.
or I can come in here and I can schedule a date and a time to have it install the application. The same thing works for doing updates. I also have the install now. So if I click install now, it pops up and I can go to my job status and I can look at the different jobs that have happened in the past, and I can see that the job is pending.
And while the job is pending, you had mentioned that there are a bunch of different apps, and Siemens has a variety of different apps on the industrial edge side. Some of them are free with Industrial Edge, some of them are paid for, some of them are kind of self-created for individual business organizations.
Yep. So one of the things to really keep in mind about Industrial Edge is that it is an open system. So the intention is to be able to bring in essentially anything that you can run inside of a Docker container and be able to run it on the edge device. So this Azure SQL Edge is not a Siemens provided application. It still has the Azure license that you have to pay to Microsoft every year to use it. But that Azure SQL Edge is available as a Docker container from Docker.
Mhm.
Grab it, and then using the app publisher for the Edge management system, you end up publishing that app directly onto your management system.
Gotcha.
There's a lot of other software that Siemens has been developing. So we have our Analyze My Drives, which is going to be able to go out and connect to your S120 drives, your G120 drives, and a few others, and analyze data coming from those drives.
Mhm.
We're going to do that using the application called the Drive System Framework. So the Drive System Framework goes out and actually pulls the data, and then the Analyze My Drives uses that data to do the analysis.
Mhm.
We have another application in the background that's being developed for doing like the fast Fourier transforms if you wanted to do tuning.
Interesting.
The idea, though, is that the Drive System Framework publishes that data onto our MQTT data bus, which is the free app right here called the data bus.
Mhm.
So with that MQTT data bus, the Drive System Framework publishes that data there, and then it's available to anything else that connects to the data bus. And it's just an MQTT data bus.
Mhm.
So it's there available in a topic space so that another application can reach out and grab it.
Awesome. And so ultimately, I guess like going back to the 1517V that you've deployed, I think we didn't really explain what that is, and someone who may not be as familiar with the nomenclature there. So that is going to be a virtual PLC that is, and I'll let the two of you elaborate on that a little bit, but that is equivalent to an S7 1500 series and is capable of running the code that you would develop in TIA Portal, correct? Or
Yes.
with some nuances?
It's a very young product for us. So it is a 1500 PLC through and through. So it acts like a 1500 PLC. It programs like a 1500 PLC. You use TIA Portal to program. Because it is such a new product, we don't support technology objects and we don't support safety. The next iterations coming are going to support safety, but we're not there yet. So right now, today, it is a 1500 PLC. It has the same working memory of a 1517, which is why it was labeled 1517. But because we have divorced the PLC software from the PLC hardware, you're not going to be able to guarantee one-to-one capabilities of a 1517 PLC sitting on a rack connected to the I/O,
Right.
and the 1517 virtual PLC.
Right.
So work memory space, but you're not necessarily going to get sub-millisecond response time just because I'm sharing the resources of my PLC with other edge apps that are running on this edge device.
And I guess we'll look into that, like what, like the load, or you can see the load of, let's say, your IPC, and ultimately you can also scale up, right? Like that's why we have two different models. So depending on like what you're running on top of the, let's call it the virtual PLC, you may want to upsize as necessary, right?
Correct. And that's where, so this is my 427, so it's a little bit larger IPC. And I have a collection more of applications installed on it. This is the IPC that I use for doing demonstrations to customers. So we have our anomaly detection application, which is used for doing machine learning. Our live twin application is if you have a MATLAB model that you have created or a model inside of Simulink, I can take that model and I can load it into live twin, and then I can directly connect the inputs and outputs of that model to my MQTT data bus and push and pull data straight out of my PLC.
Really? Interesting.
And I can do it at low latency because I'm directly next to my PLC. So I'm not running my cloud simulation up here and I have 1 second down, 1 second up to get any sort of response. I'm down, I'm right close to the machine, so I'm down at that 100 milliseconds up, 100 milliseconds down for my latency. So I have my 1500 PLC installed, but I wanted to talk about a little bit of a different application that we have on our industrial edge. It is called our IIH, or Industrial Information Hub. So this is the piece of software that we've put together to try and bring the southbound connectors together. So from here, you get kind of a dashboard where you can see where I have the communications and everything are set up. I come over to my left here and I select the different connectors that I'm going to configure. I think because of the way everything went this morning, I never actually disconnected some of this stuff. So I still have a lot of my virtualized PLC. So I pop over here to another VM that I'm running. And I have a PLC program being simulated inside of PLC Sim Advanced. It's a 1513 PLC. This PLC project is available from our GitHub. So we have, in the idea of being open source, there is a large number of application examples sitting on our Industrial Edge GitHub. So anybody can come out and walk through them. This tank application is used fairly widespread through them as different, it's just a PLC program that's, as you can see, it's simulating filling a tank, heating it up, and then filling bottles and then indexing those bottles across.
I think, I guess if we want to take a really quick step back, the idea here is that we have an application that we want to load onto the virtual PLC that is currently running inside of the edge device, which is the 127E that is sitting in front of us. So ultimately what Adam is explaining is the virtual PLC, it's running inside of this 127 IPC, which, as I said, is going to be running the application of the tank filler that Adam is showing on his screen.
Yeah, so right now I'm simulating that application just so that everybody can see that it's there in a working, functioning application. And what I'm going to do is, as I have this connected to my IIH right now, I would like to pop in and show you the tags that I have connected. So it's not a very large PLC program, so it's only a few hundred tags, but you can see that all of those tags are there. And what's really nice about the Industrial Information Hub is it's a piece of software designed to help bridge that gap between the OT world and the IT world. So very rarely in the real world have I ran into a PLC program that has my data blocks named very well, you know, and to be able to drill into it later and understand what that tag is and everything else. Oftentimes you end up looking at, you know, more of an address space depending on the brand of PLC that you're looking at. So you don't necessarily know what that value is unless you're the guy who programmed it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so you can remap it also? So you can rename and like reshuffle the data, the tags?
So what we're doing inside of the Industrial Information Hub is we're giving you this ability to come in and add an asset hierarchy.
Mm-hmm.
So I've pre-created this one, and I apologize, I actually have it all connected at this moment in time. But it's basically, I create this asset hierarchy, and I have the connection to my Ethernet IP PLC, you know, I am Bradley. I have my S7 Plus connection down to the PLC that I'm running in PLCs Advanced right now.
Mm-hmm.
And we'll be able to see when I add the virtual PLC in a little bit. But it's like, this is a very powerful tool because as much as I have data sitting over here, the name that's associated, and what I end up doing is, if you notice, I'm defining the data, I'm organizing the data, I have the ability to query the data, I have the ability to store the data.
Mm-hmm.
So on the edge device, I have now created a on-device storage. I'm not going to tell you to keep it here forever, but it's going to be able to collect the information off of the PLC, give you time series backup of that data, and then also the ability to forward that data on. So if I come back to the home page, I have here where I want to aggregate it. So I have the choice of either forwarding it to another edge device running
Mm-hmm.
Industrial Information Hub, our Insights Hub, or into Sensei. We're currently working. We have other methods of getting data up into AWS and Azure right now. They're working currently on adding those to the Industrial Information Hub as well.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I guess like maybe to again like illustrate like a business scenario where this is interesting, I think, is when you have machinery, typically you'll see that different vendors are going to have different standards. Like you said, they're going to have different naming depending on who will program that machine, will give them their own, I want to say, feel in general. And so what you can do, Adam, from what my understanding is, you can bring in that data, you can give it context in the way that you want, and you can standardize, right? So if you have different devices, can you combine data also? Can you like rename data so that it all comes in as, let's say I have an Allen Bradley, let's say, machine, and then I have like a Siemens machine and I have some other vendor. I bring it into my edge device. I can then create a single pipeline that would sort of make sure that everything is standardized.
Correct. So if we look right here, I have the two Micrologics tags that we have running in our little Micrologics PLC program.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going into the same asset model as the tags from our simulated virtual PLC. So once I have brought it in and tied it into the asset model, once I click deploy right here, all of that data is going to be live going into the stored data.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a piece that I didn't show you was the OPC UA model capabilities. So IIH in the sense that it's collecting the data, it's storing the data, it's also making that data available. So it's making that data available in a few different ways. There is a REST API, there is a GraphQL, as well as there is an OPC server. So all of the data that is brought into the IIH is going to then be made available on those three ways so that you can get to the data that is there, as well as being able to forward it to the cloud or forward it to another industrial information hub. But one of the pieces that I really like is the ability to come in here and I can add from, here we go. I can come in here and I can add an OPC UA data model. So this isn't necessarily something that I dreamt up. This is OPC Foundation creates and publishes these data models to try and help everybody across an entire industry standardize. So I have a few of them in there, but I got lucky and deleted a couple of those. So I need to add this one, PackML. So this is typically used for packing machines, bottling and everything else. And it has our namespace. And then what I can do is I can add an instance of that namespace. So this is a PackML labeler. And when I load that particular namespace in, that's what's going to show up inside of my OPC server is those namespaces. So everything is going to follow that OPC standard.
Let me ask Adam, talking about those models, are you seeing most people following a particular model, be it OPC-UA or Sparkplug-B or PackML, and that's how they're using Industrial Information Hub? Or are you seeing lots of people basically create their own models and standardize on what that model looks like, and that becomes what the organization uses into the future?
Good question. What I like about the Industrial Information Hub is that as much as I was able to use our CMA software to fully create that namespace, now that I have it showing here, this is the labeler namespace that came out of CMA, I can add an asset and I can do something strange, like try and follow an ISA 95 standard and call this like line 3. And I can bring down my labeler, and I can drop that in. So now I've brought that standard into my IIH, but at the same time, I'm not stuck to it. So I can come into admin and I can add another variable. So I want to give you a standard to build from. I don't want to give you a standard to restrict you to.
Okay.
That's the wonderfulness about the Industrial Information Hub. Now, you had made a comment earlier about being able to join those datas and things of that nature. So one of the pieces that exists inside of the IIH is this rule editor. So here you see the tag that I had dropped in. Just as a simple example, I can come in here and I can basically double that variable. And I can call this.
And so that becomes like sort of like a user-defined tag?
Exactly. So now when I exit back out, it's going to call it double trouble instead of the tag that it was before.
Gotcha.
What is being now, if I click deploy here, you notice this check mark isn't quite there yet. That's a feature that we're working to bring. It should be here by October. But the idea is that when you do that, all of the data that is there in that rule editor, so now you can do simple conversions like Celsius to Fahrenheit. You can do, it came in meters, I needed it in feet, or it came in inch pounds and I needed it in Newton meters. I can do those kinds of conversions here instead of having to go back to the PLC programmer and tell the PLC programmer to go in and edit the logic. I also can, if I wanted to, I could grab this variable here from my Ethernet IP connection, And I can come back in here.
Hold on a second. I'm briefly lost your screen.
Oh no,
There we go.
there we go. So now you see that I have that Micrologix data mixed with my Siemens data.
Mhm.
I validate it and I can save it. So now I've been able to literally join information across different machines. So I can add semantics. I can add information to the data.
Gotcha.
And that's really what the Industrial Information Hub is trying to do, is trying to help make information out of the data that is coming out of the PLCs,
Mhm.
so that when I'm using AI algorithms or machine learning algorithms, that the people who are implementing those don't have to know the exact PLC tag name.
Right.
I can enforce standards. I can take a machine that was installed 20 years ago. I can take a machine that was installed yesterday, bring them into the Industrial Information Hub, make those two machines that might be doing the same job, but be two different controls programs, two different companies built the machines.
Yep.
I can now make the data look the same when I'm presenting it into wherever it is that I want to go.
And that's a real business challenge, right? And I think like maybe we, how to say, like it's difficult to present it in an exciting way, but I think if you're dealing with those algorithms, if you're dealing with applications that utilize any form of data, this is a very critical step in making sure that the people who can use that data get it in a way that is structured, that's contextualized. And yeah, so
I've got audio.
I don't have audio. Okay.
but no, I think, again, I think there were some questions on the stream, and I believe that maybe there's a little bit of confusion because I think we're presenting so many different components at once. And so it's important to maybe, again, just to reiterate, the IIH, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but that is running on the IPC, right, in parallel with the current virtual PLC, and now it is storing the data on that same IPC, and you're then able to add other applications to that same IPC that can either transform the data, manipulate the data, and either stream it also maybe to the cloud. So that there's other steps, and the IIH is the component that allows you to retrieve the data, store the data, and transform the data.
I want to point out that because we have the two different edge devices, we're actually installing the V-PLC on a separate edge device.
Okay.
But the perfect world scenario is that, yes, the virtual PLC is running on the same edge device that you're collecting and aggregating the data out of it, as well as potentially doing screens.
Gotcha.
So a couple of applications that I didn't touch on that I wanted to talk about was Performance Insight is one, and then we also have WinCC Unified. But before I get to those, I did want to show real quick the ability to come in and look at that stored data. I have a sneaking suspicion that I'm not streaming correctly right now.
You bounced off and you got back on
Okay.
twice.
But I think we are having some trouble with Adam's stream. I'm not sure if it's completely frozen, but let's, I think we have Chris here that wanted to maybe discuss, or if, Chris, do you want to cover a couple of items when it comes to the virtual PLC? I believe you had a couple of slides on that side.
Yeah, let me try to share my screen for now.
Mhm.
Give me just a second.
I guess while Chris pulls that up, Chris, we have a question in the chat also that probably you can answer best, which is, what are the benefits of running a virtual PLC on the IED if we already have a physical PLC on the floor?
Of course, yeah. So for example, for some users that, for example, if you are already an industrial user, right, you don't have to go to get different hardwares. You can run the PLC get the same function out of the S7-1500 PLC on a virtual PLC running as a Docker container inside your edge IPC. So we are here, virtual PLC, one of the benefits is really to create this hardware independent awareness. So you can run virtual PLC, for example, on a Siemens physical hardware edge device, or you can even run the virtual PLC on a Siemens industrial virtual device, which can be simply running on all different kinds of hardwares, computers. And like Adam said, right now it's like the safety support is not supported yet, but moving forward, you can even run multiple instances of virtual PLC on the same edge device. So on the other hand, it also supports kind of like redundancy. For example, if you have one of your virtual PLC which is falling, then you can immediately switch to your second or the third instance of the virtual PLC. So these are the benefits. Plus, since all our industrial edge applications, they are subscription based with the annual license, which you can directly purchase from our marketplace. So so for example, if someday if you do not want to use the virtual PLC and you want to switch to some other applications on industrial edge, or you want to switch to some different products, then you basically just easily discontinue the subscription. So that makes the user experience even more friendly. And let's also take a step back on the virtual PLC side, with its functionality, right? Since virtual PLC is another edge application, and one of the challenges that we hear from the industry is that when you have a physical PLC and you want to apply for some firmware updates, it's always a little bit challenging. No one wants to touch the PLC anymore to apply any updates. But with virtual PLC, you can connect your edge device to the IEM, and then you can apply or make your virtual PLC up to date very easily. So that's also a benefit from using industrial edge as a platform to leverage the benefits from the central industrial edge management system features. So with that, I'm going to share my screen real quick while Adam is still working on the
And while you're doing that, Chris, I'd just like to say John is in the comments, and he had a really good point that you might still need or want physical PLCs on the machines for the line and systems, and you can apply the same control standards to the V-PLCs within the edge. And then another really important comment is that no one is saying that physical S7-1500s or Siemens PLCs are going away. This is just a new, different way to use them.
Exactly. That's a very true statement. We are not using virtual PLC to replace any of our existing hardware PLC, physical PLCs. The virtual PLC will just to be a even more extended or flexible offerings based on our industrial edge platform. So we are actually trying to make all our platforms more interoperable. So you can always use industrial edge to do some other analytics or to achieve some other benefits on the same platform. So here, I'm not sure if you can see my slides.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, so the same thing like Adam just said, we kind of breaks all our industrial applications into pretty much 3 categories. Let's start from the bottom. So you can see there are so many different southbound connector apps, including this classic Siemens S7 connector, S7 Plus connectors, which you can use to connect to our S7 PLCs to collect data from the S7 PLCs. But we also support all different kinds of protocols like Ethernet IP, Modbus TCP, Profit IO, and all these applications, all these connector apps, you can also find them in our marketplace. And in the center layer, Industrial Information Hub, which is different from the Industrial Edge Hub. So Industrial Information Hub, IAH, is the key app for OT to IT data integration, just like Adam just introduced. And at the top layer, these are all different kinds of analytics applications. So I think later on, Adam will introduce you with the Performance Insight, which is also one of our key offerings to help the users to achieve easy dashboarding and for OEE analysis. Same thing with Energy Manager. This also helps you to create like easy dashboarding functionalities to monitor your energy consumptions. However, you can see we also include a block for S7 Virtual PLC. So just like all the other applications, it's just a Docker container. Yeah, and with small footprint. So you at the same time, you can also run many other applications on the same edge device that you have Virtual PLC installed and running. And so all these green boxes are all the applications, amazing applications developed by Siemens by ourselves. So we fully support if you have any technical challenges, issues, Siemens will fully support all these applications. However, we also work with third-party app developers. So if you are an app developer, you can also, work with us to even publish your own app on our marketplace. So for example, you can see many applications from even our competitor like Whitemiller. You can also find, connector applications from third party. For example, this company called Softing, they build like CNC machine connectors, for example, for Fanuc CNC, for Siemens Numeric CNCs. So all these applications, third-party applications, are also available on our marketplace. Back to you.
Interesting. I would like to just make a comment. Bobby Cole, one of our longtime friends and guests of the show, has talked about in one of his episodes last year how he's used either Performance Insight, which we'll showcase in just a minute, or a couple of other applications for clients, especially when he goes and builds the same thing 50 or 100 or 1,000 times.
Great.
Well, my system came back to life. I did want to show you real quick what it looks like inside of this storage. So has that same asset architecture that we created. And one of the nice things is that you can actually hop in and look at your data. Oh, I chose a bad variable. We'll look at the tank level. That's much better. So
is this directly through IIH, or this is some kind of other application that's trending the data?
So the IIH is a collection of applications that run together.
Okay.
So the common configurator is tying all of the applications together. If I pop back out and I look at my edge device, I have my common configurator right here.
Mm-hmm.
I have an application called IIH Essentials. As the icon kind of looks, it's got slices. That's going to be my database on my edge device. Semantics is that ability for being able to add the information and create that data layer, or the information layer, I apologize. And then the southbound connectors. So I have the S7 connector here. I have my Ethernet IP connector right here. And I have the Modbus connector installed, but nothing connected to it right now.
Mm-hmm.
I also have this import convert tool that allows you to take the PLC project from TI Portal. You basically there's an applications free called SCADA Export that integrates into TI Portal, and it exports the entire project into a zip file.
Like, you mean the tags? So you can export the tags out of the project?
It does more than just the tags. It does the tags as well as all the certificates and everything that you need for being able to import it into a SCADA system.
Interesting.
So doing that, using that SCADA export tool gives me a file that when I come into a common connector configurator, if I'm looking at my get data, well, I will get to it and you'll see it.
All right.
We're too far ahead. Vlad, at this pace, Adam will have finished 10% of what he was supposed to show us by the end of the hour.
So now that I have data coming in, I wanted to show Performance Insights real quick. So Performance Insights, with very limited amount of data coming in, and because I've turned the things on and off, my numbers are going to be grossly terrible. But you can see down here what the state of the machine is as it's been running and filling. And as this runs a little bit longer, the OEE and performance will balance back out to be accurate. But because I left it in a stop position all night long, it is showing my OEE as being impossibly high.
I guess, so what does it take to set that up? Or that's so you can configure the screens from the application?
So that was what I wanted to show you real quick, is that this right here is all the information that I need to put in to create that OEE dashboard. So I'm going to look for a status bit that's going to tell me my machine status. And I'll go in and I'll do a little bit of a, I'll come in here. I have the ability to adjust the values, but I also have the ability to come in and create that status map. So in this application, the status tag is a single integer. It counts 1 to 7. It tells me whether or not the tank is filling, if it's heating, if it's filling the bottles, or if it's shifting the bottles, if it's stopped, or if it's in an error. And you get to come in and you get to choose how you want to have that downtime laid out and examined. And once you've saved that status mapping, and you're inside of this OEE dashboard.
So that status tag, again, like it maps to a register in your program that's running in the virtual PLC, correct?
So I created the status as a status mapping.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just the way that I know the variable is going to bring the information in. And then I grab my actual variable right here, and I choose my status map.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I can set up more than one. If I have different machines, I can have more than one machine status map, and I can connect my variable to that status.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing I have optionally is I can do here, if I have different sub-error statuses,
Mhm.
or I can do micro stops. And then I'm basically going to do my count, which is the total amount I produced. I'm cheating a little because it's a demo project, so I have the speed at which the machine is running. And then I have the good count, which is those that was like the amount of quality product coming in.
I guess we have a question from Nan. So he's asking, in this case, the OE data comes from the virtual PLC, or is it coming in from PLC Sim Advanced?
Right now in this application, I haven't loaded anything into the virtual PLC.
Okay.
So the virtual PLC is sitting here, but it's blank, empty PLC right now. Everything that we're looking at right now is coming in from this PLC Sim Advanced. And
Could
that's-
we load it into the virtual PLC Adam?
Well, that's what the plan is.
Good. So the answer to Nan's question is we're getting there.
I feel like for anyone listening at home, I feel like Vlad forgot the plan up until just that moment where Adam is like, yes, we're going to do this. And Vlad is reinvigorated with life. I do want to ask you a question when it comes to when it comes to this, Adam. Are we pulling in the information directly from the PLC or PLC Sim or virtual PLC, or are we pulling in machine status through the IIH?
So what we're doing here inside of Performance Insight is I've now disconnected myself from the PLC data. I'm now using the data out of the IIH.
Yes.
So as much as the IIH is connected to the PLC, pulling the data in and adding it to the stack in that time series database, the IIH is serving the data into Performance Insight. I'm not directly connecting Performance Insight to my PLC tags.
Okay. And that was going to be my question. Alex had a question here in the comments asking if this includes the entire Siemens portfolio of products or just devices at a certain TI level and higher, and wanting to know about structuring the data. And so that was my question of, so Alex, we've pulled in, I guess in this case, a virtual S7-1500. We've pulled in some simulations, and then we've also got a MicroLogix. We've got a MicroLogix PLC, and we'll go ahead and go show the hardware one more time, so you can see all of the hardware with the information that we're pulling in, and that hardware goes into the Industrial Information Hub where we can normalize and contextualize it And then we're pulling all of that into Performance Insight from there.
So I realize now why my OE dashboard is so crazy, because this simulation has been running since before we started. I think if I reset this and then start it back up, I come back into my OE dashboard. Now my values look much more normal instead of being more than what was possible.
Yep, that makes sense.
So some of the other, like, just to give you, creating a dashboard is also not hard. So it's like the OE dashboard is the basics. It's there, it's pre-configured for you, you plug in the data. But a lot of people want to do something more custom than that. So this production quality dashboard is one that I created. So I also was able to, I don't have my anomaly detection running at the moment, but I had some values coming in from anomaly detection, the tank temperature, the bottles produced. I have that machine status being brought in here, as well as the tank level. So now I can zoom in and I can look at my tank level as my production quality is going up as the machine is running again. So that's what you can do inside of the Performance Insight. It's a generic dashboarding tool to be able to make dashboards, but it has the dashboard for doing OE built right in, very easy to configure, very easy to get done. It also has an application called step time analysis. And I don't have that configured right now, but what step time analysis does for you is, as you have a line running, there's generally a handoff between each of the pieces of the line. And how much time do you think the line loses to that handoff? How do you actually analyze that? You use the step time analysis inside of Industrial Edge. So if I turn back here, and look at this real quick, I can show you the example.
And I guess let me throw a question at you while Adam is setting that up. So if I'm deploying one of these devices on an existing line, right, and I create that dashboard for OE, I want to be able to see what's going on inside of my facility, and someone outside of, let's say, the engineering department wants to access and see those dashboards, can we also open them up so that, let's say, a maintenance manager, operations manager can pull them up through like a web page? Like, what does that maybe interaction look like?
Yeah, correct. It is a web page that they can hit to get the dashboards. So they don't actually have to be logged into the Edge device to see the dashboard. Like what Adam's doing is they can actually just hit the web server and pull the dashboard right up on their system.
Awesome. So you can manage permissions in a way, right?
Correct.
Like obviously the engineering department probably needs to tweak them and rearrange them, but someone who wants to just view can hit the IP, again, provided the network is set up correctly. But
yes,
awesome.
that's
Gotcha.
correct.
So what I brought up is just a picture to sort of illustrate what you're doing inside of Performance Insight, is that you have the different steps of the process. If you're using a TI 1500 PLC, you might be using graph to write your logic. That's what they've got in the picture right there. So it gives you nice steps. But as it's going through all the different steps, you can see the time that it takes to go through those steps, and it flags the long times. So what you can do then is you can go back through and you can analyze where you're losing time. So this was used very well at an automotive manufacturer that was, the line was designed to run in a specific time. They were not hitting the time that the machine was supposed to be running in. Setting up performance analytics inside of Performance Insight allowed them to go through and identify where they were having stoppages in the process and eliminate them to get the machine to be able, or to get the line to run at the efficiency that it was supposed to.
That's really interesting. That's I know that same concept is used a lot in the batching processes, right? Because a batch is going to go through like various steps of transformation, whether that is just loading ingredients or mixing or heating, or like operators need to transfer between like different tanks. And so a lot of times it's not very clear how long it takes between, like those steps. And again, if it's just, let's say, the batch that takes longer to cook, or if it's the operator that hasn't pressed, the right input to transition to the next step. That's really interesting. I like that.
So using the performance or the step time analysis inside of Performance Insight is going to be how you're going to go into, like, me personally, I think that an entire company could walk around just using performance analytics and going into different factories and helping them optimize their processes. You could make an entire job of that.
I would agree. I would definitely agree.
Let me jump over. So if anybody's paying attention, you'll see that it says 19 up there. So this is a pre-released version of TIA version 19 that runs for the V-PLC.
Mhm.
So now we're getting into the actual virtual PLC.
So V19 coming out probably sometime in November.
Probably. I make no promises.
That's fine. We've got John to tell him in the comments. We can go commit John to saying that.
That's right.
John would know much better than I would as to when it's actually going to be released.
Yeah, and somebody's pointing out it's interesting that it's connecting to legacy hardware as well, right? Which the Micrologix 1100 series is now discontinued, so it's a really good way to be able to pull out data out of something like that, and then ultimately like be able to do whatever with it, but be able to monitor what's going on with the machine that might be still running on some of those controllers and hardware. So that's a good point.
Lost my audio again. There we go. So here it is. It's a 1517 PLC. And if I pop down here,
There's John in the comments. John says November of 2023. Thank you for letting us put your name on it, John. But to the best of my recollection, I think TIA portal updates normally come out November of every year.
so if anybody's familiar with TIA, there's my blank PLC.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll just real quick right click, and I shouldn't have. Apologies.
We're building up the suspense with the silence a little.
I know. I'm sorry.
It's good. No problem.
Here we go. Finds my 1500 PLC. Even shows me that it's a beta.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't allow me to check flash LEDs. I wonder why. Sorry. Actually, it does. But
Does it?
we'd have to look up there. I don't think it does.
Oh, hold on. Let's go change.
Anyways. I'm going to click load here.
Well,
Oh, I unchecked it. I'm sorry.
Oh. So again, to address the question that was asked earlier, up until now, we were pulling the tags from the simulated virtual machine that you have running on your laptop, and now we're transferring that program, the same program, right,
Yep.
into the virtual PLC that is running. If I can pull up the hardware inside of this 127E IED device.
Arlen, while Adam is working on this, you've been very quiet. I guess I know that you spend a lot of time working on the industrial edge side. What are you most excited about? What do you see your customers most excited about, the people that you talk to?
The customers I've been working with are trying to find ways to get data from the plant floor up into their either in the plant systems, for the management to look at and analyze the data. And then also they're looking ways to, some customers are even trying to reduce the number of pieces of hardware to lower their costs, which is where like they can use the industrial edge along with the virtual PLC and to get into one piece of hardware instead of multiple pieces of hardware. So.
Absolutely. I think that that's really interesting. And I think the industrial information hub being able to go pull all of that legacy information in is one of the most new, at least new to me, not necessarily new to
Right.
Siemens, but new to me, really compelling pieces of technology, because as much as it would be great to go rip out everything and replace it with brand new S7-1500s or S7-1500Vs, that is not necessarily the world that we live in.
Right.
And so there is going to be 1 or 2 or 5 brands of legacy PLCs that all live out on the plant floor, and we have to go find a way to live through that. Vlad has certainly told a couple of stories of retrofits and where they bought brand new machines and then just ripped all the hardware out because it wasn't the standards of that organization. And that is absolutely the exception and not the rule for most small to medium-sized organizations.
Good. Looks like we are live.
We're live. We have the PLC program loaded. And the fun part is that when you go and you look at your edge device, it looks absolutely nothing different. It's just an edge device. It just has a PLC running inside it.
What about the data? Like, do you have to remap some of the endpoints for the data?
I haven't replaced the PLC Sim Advanced is still running.
Okay.
So I haven't stopped that in any way, shape, or form yet. The plan here is to do that momentarily, but I just wanted to show you the statistics of the 127 running. So we've upped our memory usage, but our CPU usage is, still variable, especially for such a small little in IPC.
And so I guess the point here is you can see ultimately, again, depending on what you're trying to do on that edge device, you might want to either upgrade if obviously you're going to load multiple applications, or you're going to be fine with the 127, right, which is technically the smallest device, but you can go all the way up to 427. Is that the highest, or there's even like a rack mount that if I'm not mistaken.
847.
Yeah, there's an 847.
Okay.
out there
So
too.
847 is a nice big, large rack-mounted PC.
Mhm.
And then we also have our virtual edge device, which allows you to scale up to, I think, 8 processors, if I remember right, and 64 gig of RAM. Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's really the nice thing about the virtual edge device, is that you can take it and you can go down to 2 cores and 4 gigs of RAM. You can go all the way up to 8 cores and 64 gigs of RAM, and it's running on an ESXi server.
Mhm.
So by all rights, you have all the same features and functionality and capabilities of running an OS inside of an ESXi server.
Gotcha. Interesting.
I just wanted to stop here real quick and show that, like, you have this S7 job system and the Simatic S7S. Those are the same files that you would see on your Simatic memory card, because it's just a 1500 PLC running on a Docker container. And then if I come back into our common connector configurator, the expectation is that
And so to the previous conversation, if you're not reading chat, and we'll have this in the description as well, Chris is posting a couple of links if you're interested in, I guess, learning more about different devices. We're not going to cover all the nuances and all the capabilities, but it's going to be in that link, and it will tell you what's available and what the capacities are. And ultimately, once you deploy the applications, you should be able to make a decision of what makes sense for your specific application.
So that SCADA export tool I was talking about earlier, I just grabbed the file. It's like if I come over into my older VM, when you install the SCADA export tool, you just come to your PLC, right click on it, and it appears right down at the bottom of that list. Export to SCADA.
Okay.
So click there, name it, put a path, click export, dumps it to where you want it to be. So now you guys were talking while I came in here. Everybody else got to see, but I came in, went into the S7 connector, clicked add data source, selected a 1500 PLC, add from file, browsed to that export file that I had created yesterday. Typed in the IP address that I want. If I had an access password, I would type that in here. But because all the certificates are inside of that export file, if I did everything correctly to fully secure my PLC, everything comes inside of that export file.
Gotcha.
I also have the ability to add like PLC alarms, and I can use the timestamp from the tags of the PLC if I want to.
Versus adding them here.
Correct.
If you need, okay.
So a lot of devices, the edge device included, is going to pull data from your PLC, but the PLC might not have any time source. So it
Right.
doesn't know what the time is to timestamp that tag. And a lot of what goes on when you're trying to do analysis of data is you're trying to line up events from disparate systems.
Mhm.
So getting things to be in time is really important. So if you're using a PLC that has the time source availability, use it.
Gotcha.
If you don't, the edge device can apply its time, and it's going to be very close because the short distance in time from when you're reading the data to when you're archiving it.
How do you, so when you pull data with the situation, can you specify, I want to pull data, let's say on change, I want to pull data on like a time interval, like what is, or when it's timestamped by the PLC, like what does that like resolution look like?
So the way the edge device works to try and be very lightweight on the communication is that it is going to be cyclic on change.
Mhm.
So I'm not going to pull every data point out of a PLC, every scan of the PLC. I'm only going to pull that data that has been changed. And I'm going to do it at that polling rate of, is it 100 milliseconds, half a second, 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
Interesting. Interesting. I like that.
Oh, I have to change the data source. Sorry, guys. So here's all my tags. I can select them all. I have to choose that cycle time.
Mhm.
I'll be nice to my machine and take 1 second. And then I get to choose if I want to just read the data or if I want to read and write the data. So if I want to write data back down to my PLC, it can be really, really important sometimes, but other machines you might not want to let anybody write PLC data to. So you get that choice here. And then once I've applied that, then I'm going to come over here and say import. So now I have all those tags sitting there. Oh, I did not click data bus. So once I click deploy, temporarily breaks the connection to the first one, but it should come back and add the connection to both. Oh, I am not getting to my PLC. Oh, that's because 10.90 is the IP address of my edge device, not my V-PLC.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 105, but I'm not sure right now. It is 105.
So as Adam is going through this, I know we've got a few new people to the chat. Everyone, welcome. We are getting close to finishing up this live build, but it's been super exciting. I will let everyone know if you've jumped in recently and you would like to go back and watch the last hour or so, this will be available on replay on LinkedIn, as well as on the Manufacturing Hub YouTube channel. And I will ask if you guys are hanging in here to please feel free to go subscribe to the Manufacturing Hub YouTube channel, where you can go watch all of our long-term of events and every Wednesday's show. In addition to that, Chris Liu and some of our other Siemens friends have thrown in a bunch of links. If you guys are interested to learn more about Industrial Edge, if you're interested to learn more about the Edge hardware, if you're interested to learn more about the IIH or the V-PLC or any of those, please feel free to go ahead and follow those links, and we will go ahead and make sure that we collect all of that and get them in one place as well.
There we go. So my little green indicator here shows that I have my connection. And now I see I have all those identical tags coming out of PLC 2.
So a couple of questions I think that came in that we should probably address. So number one, the write data to PLC feature only works on the virtual PLC app, or it's also capable of doing writing data to the physical PLC connected on the floor. And again, my first take is I think those are disjointed, right? It has nothing to do with the virtual PLC. It is a feature inside of IIH that you can write back to the PLC,
Correct.
regardless of the device, right? Like it's just the two concepts are separate. So the virtual PLC is running on the IED, which is sitting in front of us right now. And what Adam has set up is a connection to that device, but that has nothing to do with it being virtual, physical, whatsoever. So you can do that with any device, correct?
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the other comment, which was a bit of an interesting comment. So Carl said, so you're able to run a virtual S7 PLC in an industrial edge virtual device in a VMware virtual machine running on a host server PC. And again, that's why I want to recap, because I think there's many different moving parts right now and many different concepts. So again, we have a virtual PLC running on actual hardware sitting in front of us. And if I can pull that up really quickly before we go back to Adam's screen. So again, the 127E is the physical device that currently is running the virtual PLC that Adam is programming from his virtual machine. But the virtual PLC is running on actual hardware. It is not running in a virtual machine currently somewhere. It is running on the 127E right here. I just want to be clear of what's what's virtualized, what's not virtualized, because there's, like I said, a couple of moving pieces. So maybe there is a little bit of confusion. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I was just trying to see if I could get this last little piece to work here or not. I make no promises on this one. This is the extra little piece. I'm not going to get my connection. So this is WinCC Unified on Edge. So here I am. Oh, I think I know what it is. I need to do that. I have my ability to build screens just like everybody wants to be able to do, but I'm doing it on my Edge device. And I actually have the choice of doing it here on my Edge device using this online engineering tool.
Mm-hmm.
I also have the ability to use Unified and do it inside of TI Portal.
So you can export what you build in TI Portal into this.
No, I can use a screen that I have already built inside of TI Portal, and I'm running my WinCC Unified Runtime Manager here. So there are some limitations. I can't do all of the stuff that you can do inside of WinCC Unified right now.
Mhm.
But if you have if you know the guardrails and you stay within the boundaries, you can build yourself a screen inside of TI Portal using WinCC Unified
Gotcha.
and download it to this runtime server
Okay.
and run that runtime server from the edge device.
And that's a separate application on your IED? Or is
It
that,
is.
I might have missed that step.
I know I snuck it in on you.
Okay, gotcha.
So here we got WinCC Unified Engineering and then the runtime.
Gotcha.
And I think what I need to do right now is pop back into here.
While we're, I guess, going through those steps, Arlen, if I may throw a question at you,
Sure.
Which was, I think, asked a little bit earlier when it comes to licenses, right? And I think that Adam is showing us an array of different applications that are available currently on the IPC. But if you want to go and get different applications, there is a marketplace, right?
Correct.
And they're all going to have like different pricing models. Some of them are going to be free. Some of them are going to be like yearly licenses. Is there, like, I guess, because they're utilization licenses, could you paint us a picture of what that ecosystem looks like?
Yeah, currently in the marketplace, you can either pick, it's either going to be like a free app or it'll be one that you pay like a yearly or like a monthly fee on it in a SaaS model. You can also, like when you're just checking out Industrial Edge or there's an app that you think you might be interested in and you want to try it out first, we do have the capability of doing like a 3-month free trial. And then either you cancel so you don't get billed if you don't like the app, or if you want to continue to use the app, then of course you can let it roll into where it'll bill you, at a yearly interval. Yeah.
And I would say like the interesting piece there is you can scale like as you, I want to say like grow in your factory, right? So you don't have to buy all the apps all at once. You go in and, for example, you want to bring in data and you can very easily do that with the free apps, with the connectors. And then if you want to have some kind of a, I don't know, AI machine learning application, then you bring that in. Then if you want to add visualization, you bring that in. And ultimately, I think more and more applications will be available, but ultimately you don't have to make the investment all at once. You need to figure out what makes sense to you and your application, right? Because not everything's going to be applicable also.
Yeah. And another thing probably to bring up too is, let's say you have 10 edge devices, but maybe you only want to run that app that you paid for on one edge device. You're not paying to run it on 10 edge devices. When you load it, basically the license you're buying is a per device license. So you can run it on one of your 10, and you might have your other 10 doing something else, or the other 9.
Interesting.
So
at the same time, it's also very low cost to try.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it's like you want to try it and you decided it, you got it, you liked it, and then a couple of years later you find something that works better. If you cancel that software as a subscription service, it's not a ginormous investment in it. So it's easy to rearrange the basket basically as your needs change through time.
Good. We have Chris who pulled up his screen in case he wants to add a couple of, items on that as well. Chris, what are your thoughts?
Thanks, Vlad. Yeah, so totally agree with Arlen and Adam. And actually what Arlen was referring to is this industrial marketplace. So here we kind of mentioned at the very beginning of this live build that like Industrial Edge Hub is actually your starting point. You can actually get your hub access for free. You simply click on this orange button, start for free, and you can get your hub access today, like right now. And all the applications, they are annual license based. So you can find the pricing also on this website. We also mentioned like our third party edge applications, right? So here, if you go to the bottom, you can also see, hey, like apps that is developed from our third-party app providers from the ecosystem. They're also already available on our marketplace. So that way, if you are from, if you have background, if you have the capability to, bring your own applications to Siemens Edge platform, and we can help you to promote your own software and you can create also a new business model. One more feature I would like to share with you is that starting actually, I think a few months back, that's the beauty of software as a service. So you can get 3-month free trial on pretty much all the edge applications that you can find on the marketplace. So you basically go to the app page and you click on try 3 months free, then go through the checkout process, and you can test all these applications with $0, with zero cost. So back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris.
If you want to look, it's a nice little unified screen. A little shinier, a little better graphics, but it's the same bottling machine.
I like it.
All running on this guy right here. Along with, I guess technically I have the PLC running on the 127, but all of the work that's being done, so all of my screens, all of my engineering for my screens is all being done right here.
Yeah, on your 427.
On my 427.
What does it take to get like a new app? Like let's say, like Chris was just showing us the marketplace. Let's say I really liked that like Cinemeric connector or like something else. What does the deployment of that app to the 127E look like?
So depending on what the application is going to depend on how it's going to go.
Mhm.
So the connector that was created by Softing, not Siemens,
Mhm.
actually ties into the industrial information hub.
Okay.
So I have it in my management, I grab it and I install it. And you're gonna have to wait a similar amount of time because I talked that there's a timer system. So it could be up to a minute before the edge device itself reaches out to the management system and says, oh, I have a new job. But we got close to the timer. So it's executing the install right now. I can come down here and I can see that the install is occurring inside of my edge device. And once that application is finished installing, I mean, it's really important to keep in mind that each of these little tiles is a Docker container.
Mhm.
So I'm not necessarily interfering or interrupting when I install and uninstall a Docker container from the other ones that are running. However, because they're a Docker container and there's a Docker network running on the edge device, these applications have the ability to talk to each other. So that's why my common connector configurator, I very well may have to close and reopen the web page. But it's like that same common connector configurator that we were using before now has 4 connectors instead of 3. There's my edge from CNC.
Wow. That's really cool. It auto updates all of the other apps too. That's pretty cool.
The Industrial Information Hub is something that they really started getting into a point last fall that it was somewhat functional. And through this year, they've just been adding and adding and adding. The screens have gotten better. The interfaces have gotten better. And it's very similar look and feel to all the rest of the connectors. You're going to add your tags. You can do a restore, a backup. You're going to add your data source.
Well, I mean, ultimately, we don't have a CNC.
You're right. I'm
here,
sorry.
but yeah.
It's out back because we're at Catch.
Well, we could have wheeled out, like for the grand finale, like we're wheeling out this like massive CNC.
Everyone pause while Vlad goes and rolls in the working CNC machine. No, okay, but no, this has been super exciting. So I think some of the key takeaways, at least for me, are the Siemens Industrial Edge and the Siemens Industrial Edge like applications development and where you can go purchase it is amazing. There are a huge number of opportunities, as we can all see on Adam's screen, and as Chris was showcasing earlier, on where we can go. We talked a little bit about Energy Manager in the chat. Dallas was in the chat. He and I had a conversation in person about it last week, and so I think that that's very exciting. We talked about Performance Insight, which is what you guys saw that Adam had built the OEE on. We've got the S7-1500 that we did some simulation on some of the edge hardware. But no, I think it seems like the future is now. And if a manufacturer wants to go leverage some 2020s style technology, this is certainly the place to go check out, certainly the place to go take a look at to see if it works for your technology stack and your facility.
I will add to Dave's point also, and I think there were a few comment exchanges in chat. I think we're only scratching the surface here. The idea is not necessarily to cover everything in depth, but there's definitely, so someone's mentioning features that are related to more like cybersecurity and how SSL certificates are probably going to be handled and how user management is done. So there's, I would say, a lot of those features that we're definitely not able to cover, including even, I would say, the connectors. I think we've showcased a little bit of features, but there's a lot more to the applications than that. I don't think it's the last time we're talking about this ecosystem, the hardware or the software. So definitely tune in when we explore more. But let me switch back to Adam. He does have a comment.
Sorry. So, it's free to sign up for your Hub account. Once you have access to your Hub account, all of these documents are posted on our CEO's webpage as well. So you can go to CEO's and you can search. But when you have a Hub account, come to the documents section, and here's a getting started for building your management system. Here's the operations manual for how it works, app publisher. Here's for your edge device for operation and update procedures. But this one right here, this will answer a lot of those questions that were just brought up. This security overview, that's going to walk you through and explain to you, how to set up your firewalls, what things need to happen. And like everything is 443. So we're not talking about opening up port 80 and allowing all sorts of traffic through. But it's like, it walks you through and explains to you what it is and why things are designed and developed inside of the edge device like they are, or in the edge ecosystem, not just the device, but the device to the management to the Hub account. Like there's a reason that the Hub account up in the cloud doesn't talk all the way down to the edge device, because tons of companies have tried it as a startup to like, hey, we've got this cool little device, and then they reach into from the cloud, and you walk into a factory, and the IT department says, no, we're not going to allow you to open up that port, and you're done. The reason that the edge ecosystem exists is to have that management layer in the middle, that the management layer is going to live inside of an area that isn't going to be connected to the shop floor. It's going to exist in that IT infrastructure, and it's going to reach out to the Hub. It's going to get the updates. It's going to get the apps, and everything is going to be done for that from the manager. And then the manager is what reaches down to the devices. The devices are typically, if you haven't noticed, almost all of them have at least two network interfaces. The 427 and the 127 actually have three. So you're going to set up one of the network interfaces to connect to the IEM, and you're going to set up a second network interface that's going to connect down to your actual shop floor, to your PLCs, and to your other equipment.
Okay, so you could segment it that way.
Yeah, and the other thing to make notice of is you can't see it, but on each port on the edge device is isolated from the other port.
Yep.
So you can't communicate between the two ports.
They're completely separated. Not just are they three separate network interface cards, but in software, because we control the industrial edge OS, there is no interconnection between those three. So you can't connect. There's no way to jump from one to the other. And it's all covered inside that security package.
That is really interesting. I would not have thought that's how it's set up. That's really interesting. I like that.
Well, it has to be able to stand the test of time. That's what Siemens is doing. It's like we're trying to bring to the world a way of bringing down that IT capability. So when I want to run the AI inference server is one of the applications that's available on our marketplace. That AI inference server isn't going to be, hey, go onto your edge device and upload a whole bunch of images and train your model and everything else, because we also have a vision connector that isn't quite available for purchase yet, but it's getting close. But it's like I don't want you to use some Siemens created training model for training your AI. I want you to go to what you're doing in the cloud for training your AI.
Mhm.
So that AI inference server is not an AI training tool. It is an AI processing tool. So you're going to train the AI in the cloud. Once you have that model trained, we have 2 additional apps that will run. One of them is a model monitor and one of them is a model manager. That model manager is what loads the model down into the inference server and starts and stops those models from running. The model monitor monitors those models, because one of the things that happens, I think we've all started to see that when you have like things like ChatGPT, that it's like that AI can go off the rails.
Mhm.
So that AI model monitor is monitoring the AI running on the inference server and allows you to do periodic refreshes of that model if you need to. So the entire idea of the edge ecosystem is not necessarily to divorce the capabilities of the cloud, but it's to bring the capabilities of what you're doing in the cloud down to the edge and do it at low latency, do it fast, make smart decisions, and get on with it.
Interesting. I don't want to take us down the path of exploring some of those AI capabilities and features, because I think that in itself might be 2 hours.
Sorry.
But
Yes.
I think it's super interesting, right? And again, I talked a little bit off stream that I spoke to a gentleman that's working very heavily in that space. So I'm sure there's a lot of interesting conversations and maybe even demos on how that is executed. But yes, that is awesome. It's really cool.
But no, I think we should thank everyone for being here. I know like 2 or 3 dozen of you, or 3 or 4 dozen of you, have stuck with us for almost the entirety of the show. So thank you everyone for doing that. As I said before to any of our newcomers, you will be able to continue to watch this replay on LinkedIn as well as the Manufacturing Hub YouTube channel. We want to thank everyone from Siemens for both hosting us here, and Adam and Arlen for sitting in betwixt Vlad and I as we go through this build and arm wrestle for who gets to ask the next question, as well as Chris Liu and everyone from the factory automation team for putting this together and helping us condense all of our questions into somehow less than 2 hours, which I wasn't really sure we could do at the beginning. If you guys are interested, go check out Siemens Industrial Edge, Siemens Information Hub, Industrial Information Hub. All of those links will be here, and with everything we post, please feel free to go ahead and follow Adam and Arlen, as well as Vlad and myself on LinkedIn. Go follow all of the other channels, and if you're listening on podcast form, please tell us if you like listening to this. I know that there was a lot of very computer intense items, but until next week, we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you, everyone.